Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sallyanne will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sallyanne with you, and it's my great pleasure to welcome back Sharon Hoffman, who was last with us for episode 107. So welcome back, Sharon.
Thank you, Sallyanne. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, and I've asked Sharon to join me this week because it's a special week for both of us and for 9,000 or so of our colleagues throughout Australia, because it's Dietitians Week. And we're going to be revealing some of the joys but also the frustrations that we experience working as dietitians in this very noisy nutrition environment. Just a little bit about Sharon, although we're going to be finding out more about her and what she enjoys doing as a dietitian. But Sharon, like myself, is also a women's health dietitian, and she likes to take a friendly approach to her work, and like myself also loves hearing the feedback. What you told me to do actually works. And we'll get underway, I think, Sharon, just sort of taking a bit of a recap why we chose to work in nutrition and dietetics. So for yourself, how did you end up working in nutrition and then moving over to dietetics as well?
Thanks, Sallyanne. I've been asked this question a few times over the years, and the answer is the origin story is always the same, I guess, isn't it? It's for me, I mean, I grew up in the country. Diet wasn't really well known then. Dietitians were never heard of. So I guess my health was always something I was quite interested in as a starting point, but I really had no idea what to do with that. Fast forward a few years, I found myself backpacking through Europe and Asia in my 20s. And I think the one thing I noticed through all the different cultures, I went through Mongolia and Russia and a lot of Eastern Europe and a lot of Western Europe, is that everyone connects through food, and all the food is different, and potentially the way that they connect through food is different, but it is that one central point that brings people together. So I guess those two factors coming together for me made me look into it more when I returned home to Australia. Yes. And I found out you could become a dietitian. So I thought, right, let's give it a crack, and here I am quite a few years later.
Yeah, it's interesting as I was listening to you. I often forget that after high school, after doing year 12, I didn't actually go straight to uni. I deferred. I had applied to do nutrition and dietetics, but for various reasons I decided no, I just wanted to work for a little bit. And in my usual style, rather than picking up my deferment after 12 months, I'd let it go and then realized, I just can't pick up my deferment. So I had to apply again, because what had actually prompted me was I was sitting at my desk at my job, and I started thinking of the periodic table of all things, chemistry tables. And I'm thinking, this is a bit weird. But it was obviously my mind saying, hey, you need to head back to science and have a look at what's possible for you to do. And I'd actually done just a certificate course in nutrition and fitness, and I think that's what had sort of got me thinking again about going into nutrition and dietetics. And so I went down and to Centrelink as it was, that had the career information, and I realized the only way I was going to get ahead was, yes, I had to go to university. There was no other way to do it. And off I sort of went. But I suppose why I initially was interested in nutrition and dietetics was because, again, my own experience with food. And for me, it had been a bit of a love-hate relationship with food, in terms of restrictive eating to lose weight, and then overcompensating. And then I'd had some illness in year 12 and had changed what I was doing with my food based on the advice that I had got from a naturopath, because again, I lived in the country, there weren't any dietitians, and this naturopath, looking back, actually gave quite sound nutrition-based advice to support me through what was a personally stressful period of time. So I think that was happening for me, and I also think I wasn't happy with the idea that people were sort of judged on their body size and shape as well. So that's always been a bit of a theme for me throughout my life and my work. So, and I just sort of thought, well, if I can do something to make life easier and happier for other people, then that's what I want to do.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's where it all starts. And not surprisingly, a lot of healthcare practitioners I speak to went in because of their own health or their own interests, or a family member or friend struggling with a particular condition. So yeah, so for yourself, looking at your career in nutrition and in health, what are the changes that you have seen in the nutrition landscape, and perhaps, the roles that dietitians are playing?
Yeah, well, I think we're probably going to talk about this in a little bit, but I think absolutely social media has changed everything. And I think particularly since COVID as well, like with lots of more information being online, people having access to it, be it correct or not. I think it's that big change. So a lot more people who I see have already done their research, however well evidence-based that is or not, whether they've just gone to Dr. Google or they've actually looked up some proper research. So the thing I found is people are a lot more informed coming to you, and I think also a little bit more questioning as well. I think with that information comes a bit more of questioning, just, and that's not negative at all. That is,
No.
I think it's good that people are looking into things themselves and trying to find solutions, and then often they got to a point they go, oh god, there's too much information out there, I don't know what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to go see someone. And so they come often with a bit of misinformation, some of misinformation, some of it's good information, and then they're kind of like trying to figure out what's the middle ground and what's going to work for them. So I think, I guess, information has changed a lot. People have got more access to it, and I think also social media. There's a lot more dietitians out there on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, which is good as well. It's not not a negative. It's just a change. It's
No.
just something that's different. Yeah.
No, that's right. And I think, to put it into perspective, in Australia, dietetics is a relatively small profession. I looked on our website and there's about 9,150 members, say, compared to physiotherapy, which is close to 50,000. They're up around 47,500.
Yeah.
And for me, having been in nutrition and dietetics for over 30 years, I suppose I've seen a change in where dietitians are working as well, and how you actually access dietitians. And that's been a huge change. I mean, there's never been enough dietitians in the public sector being available to support you with free consultations. But that's been a big shift. And I think when I first started working, even though I didn't work in a tertiary hospital because I was in a rural area, there was a food service dietitian, and then there were your dietitians that looked after the patients that were in hospital, and then there was the outpatient dietitian. Well, that's all changed, and very much with the hospital system, because people are not staying in hospital for as long, and some are not even getting into hospital. I mean, gosh, this is really showing my age and how things have changed. And again, it's not necessarily for the best. But I spent a lot of my career also working in type 2 diabetes, and people actually went into hospital to be stabilized for type 2 diabetes. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really changed. That's all done in the outpatient setting now. And talking to some of my clients who have had diabetes for as long as I've been a dietitian, they didn't even get to see a dietitian when they were diagnosed with diabetes, and got given a meal sheet from either their GP or the diabetes educator, and couldn't make it work for them. And I think that's the real important thing about dietitians that many people may not understand. We are really trained to translate the scientific evidence into practical things you can do to not only increase your food knowledge for the particular health condition you have, but also start actually making changes to your eating habits. So there's both that nutrition knowledge and behaviour change. And what we do is based on science and scientific evidence. And I think that's the step that a lot of people don't understand is why we go about our work the way we do. But certainly thinking that these days most people have to pay to see a dietitian, and that has changed a lot in 30 years. Having said that, I think there's always been, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on when we sort of touch on the frustrations, having one subsidized consult or a free consult with a dietitian is not enough.
It's
And
not.
I
It's
know
really not.
when I worked in diabetes centres, that's why we changed our model of care to a combination of both individual and group, because most people are only seeing the dietitian once.
Yeah.
And yet they had this lifelong condition now that they were supposed to just manage after one consultation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the changes that I've certainly seen for our workforce, and some are positive and some perhaps not necessarily the best for supporting people to make that long-term change.
Mm. It's interesting
No.
what you were saying about people not being in hospital as long. I've done a little bit in my early part of my career. I was working as a clinical dietitian in Queensland, and the one thing I would notice is if you got referred, say, patient got referred to see you in hospital, you go see them, you go back a day later, potentially 2 days later, depending on workload. And I guess the condition that they were in, and they'd often be discharged. And so there's that very there's not the continuity of care
No.
that people really need, and that I guess, and that kind of proves that the benefit of seeing a dietitian is that it's never just one session. I mean, potentially if you're after a bit of information or a bit of clarity around some
Yeah.
information, but if you're actually trying to make a difference or a change, or you've got a condition that requires some nutrition therapy, then one session is never really enough. It's all that follow-up stuff. We just get all the information in the first session.
I
You
know.
really need the follow-up sessions to
No,
see the progress. Like,
I know. And I think that's kind of, again, what's not necessarily understood is that the assessment that we take our clients through is just so important, because if we don't really understand what's going on with health and lifestyle and also personal nutrition goals and health goals, then we can't provide the support that's
right.
required, or we will provide support, but it's not going to sit well with our clients because there's a mismatch there.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
you were saying about outcomes, they've always been important to me. And whilst we started sort of changing the way we operated the diabetes centre, that's when I actually started my master's research, which became the practice guidelines for dietitians in type 2 diabetes, because it was really just trying to get the evidence together to show one consult with a dietitian is not enough to actually sustain those changes. And that's why I'll talk about it a little bit later. Research is just so important. It can be frustrating too. And I've certainly got some examples of that I'm going to share in our discussion, but it's so important that we base what we do on evidence, and people understand that there aren't quick fixes. If there were, then you wouldn't need dietitians, you wouldn't need influencers, you wouldn't need nutritionists, you wouldn't need anything.
That's true.
You'd just be doing it yourself. So what do you love about being a dietitian? But what keeps you wanting to be a dietitian, I suppose, is another way of thinking about that.
Yeah, look, I really love, and it's going to sound a bit cliched, I think, but I really love connecting with people, and I really love being able to help them. And that is, I know when we were talking before about what made you become a dietitian, and I was talking about the connection with food and stuff. I guess the other thing I didn't mention is that I really want to help people. Like, it's a caring profession, it's a helping profession, but it's really, I specialize in women, and so I really love connecting with women and hearing their stories and hearing about their worlds, and then helping them find realistic solutions that are going to fit in. And I think we can feel so overwhelmed with so much stuff, and being able to go, actually, we could just do this one or two things, and that's going to make a big difference. And like you said, my little intro, I really like it when someone comes back to you and goes, hey, I did that thing that you said, and it worked. And you're like, yeah, it did. That's amazing. Like recently, just the other week, I was talking to a client, and one of my big things at the moment is fiber. I love talking about fiber. I think we don't get enough fiber in our diet at the moment, or in general, not just at the moment, probably all the time. And we're talking, this particular client was looking to like, a bit of weight management. And so we talked about benefits of fiber and yada, yada. She came back to me on email just the other day and she's like, hey, I did the fiber thing you said, and it's actually really helped. And I'm like, yes, it did. That's right. And it's just such a, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a selfish thing, but I really like it when people get the results. Like, I don't know, it's just such a nice, that is why I do what I do. I just love talking to women, helping them, and then hearing that it's actually helped a little bit, which has made someone's life a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
So,
And I
yeah.
think, reflecting myself as well for our conversation, and it was like, well, yeah, I love hearing about the results as well. Having worked so long, there's just so many wonderful things that I've done, not just on an individual level with clients, but in public health and community health and so forth as well. But I really remember a lady, she was really distressed. Blood sugars were going up. Within 7 days, we had them back where we needed them. And it was just such a weight off her mind, like in terms of this stress about, like, I need to go on to insulin or whatever. And we
Yeah.
obviously talked about that. Going on to insulin is not the end of the world. And I sort of have coached other ladies along that line who really did need to go on to insulin. It didn't mean they were going to gain 20 kilos, because they went on to insulin. There's ways to manage that. And it's also, I suppose, being able to step back and saying what I can see this person achieving is not necessarily what they want to achieve. And as you said, we like seeing the results come in. But we've got to remember, and this is a reminder for ourselves, for me personally as well, is that what we want to achieve can happen in stages. It doesn't have to happen straight away. And I think about the clients who have been able to get up healthy, convenient eating in their crazy households with children and working full time, and that being achievement, them perhaps stopping some of the non-hunger snacking, but they may not be ready to let go of what I know is an unrealistic weight goal. But that's okay.
Yeah.
They've got something that's
Yeah.
keeping them motivated, or they may not be ready to really look at that comfort or emotional eating.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
As long as I think we can help our clients focus on what they're doing well. Because just to clarify about weight goals, that if that is our goal and we're not achieving it, then that can cause us to stop, which is why I really have got to the stage where I don't like weight goals at all.
I don't either. I
And
always
get referred from a GP, this lady needs help with weight loss. And I'm thinking, oh, no, not again. I have covered in the podcast that I think we really need to make that shift to talk about body composition rather than actual weight loss. So this is a joy as well as a frustration.
It is,
Because we can get in there and say, okay, these are the decisions that have been made, and these are the pros and these are the cons. And I was reminded of this, Sharon, just recently. I tuned into the Dietitians Association seminar on gut health. I was particularly interested in the gut health and mental health connection, and also just to get updated on gut microbiome. And I was reminded that as a healthcare practitioner, we do have to talk about the pros and cons of any approach. Whereas getting back to social media influencers and people who are not trained in health, they will just conveniently tell you what works and why it works. They don't.
Or what's worked for them or them, not even anyone potentially.
That's right. That's right. And I think, again, people don't understand necessarily the difference between research. And again, it can be frustrating because research takes time. But what research is trying to do is identify which approaches will help as many different types of people as possible. Whereas if one influencer has successfully lost 30 kilos, then there's this idea that, oh, well, I can help other people lose 30 kilos and maintain it as well, without that health knowledge, without necessarily understanding some of the challenges people face changing their eating habits and that psychological relationship we have with food as well.
Yeah.
But like I said, when I start talking about the frustrations of our profession, I start seeing the opportunities as well
Yeah,
to
that's
actually
true.
help people
Yeah,
move forward with the choices that they've already made, because
yeah.
we can't go back and change the past, but we can
No,
look at what life is offering us now, and then how can we improve on that if that's possible.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really important.
The social media influencers stuff is interesting, and that is it's hard, and it's hard because being dietitians, we are bound by our code of conduct where we can only talk about evidence-based information, and so we can't jump on the latest bandwagon of whatever the fad is, and we wouldn't anyway, because I think that's part of our ethics and that's part of us of our code of conduct.
Yeah.
But it is very frustrating when you see someone who may have done or may not have even done a nutrition, like a very short nutrition course, not a longer term one,
Yeah.
and then starts spruiking different fatty ideas. I came across one not that long ago who was talking about nutrition labels, an Australian one, and the reason I say that is because she was talking about America, what was an American
Yes.
label,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was just so. And for those people who don't know, there's quite a bit of difference, and you'd see it visually. Like the American ones have got those big black thick lines.
Mm.
Our Australian ones are much more detailed, which is tricky in itself. I understand reading labels can be troublesome.
Yeah.
So she was, and look, I have to say this: she was doing. I believe she 100% was doing it with the best intent.
Yeah.
She was trying to educate people on how to read a label, which
Yeah.
is not a bad, I think that's a great idea. However, just that side of misinformation meant that she was A, using an American label, and B, she was not necessarily saying the right information
Yeah.
out there. So it was just frustrating because she's got 11 billion followers, and what do you do with that? People are gonna believe it. People are gonna listen and believe it.
I know. I
And
know.
it's hard, but
Yeah. And
it's
as
out there, and
yeah, I know.
yeah,
And as I've shared with you many times, I've been active online for a number of years and on social media. But you get some days where you think, why do I even bother?
yeah,
And it's like, well, Sallyanne, you have to be the voice of
yeah,
reason. You have to be the
yeah.
voice of truth out there. And even if someone's not listening to you today, they may remember something you
That's right.
said. And when the time is right, they'll say, oh, well, I've tried these things and they haven't worked. Maybe I should go back and check out what
Yeah,
Sallyanne was saying. But yeah,
yeah.
sometimes you feel like you're just like this tiny little voice
Well, we kind of
amongst
are. We really are.
all
There's
that
so much out there.
I know,
Uh,
all that noise, that nutrition
yeah,
noise. So I agree with you, it's frustrating, but at the same time it's a challenge. It's like, well,
yeah.
how can I counteract this in a professional way?
Make it an opportunity,
Yeah,
potentially.
that's right. Again, it's like, well, I think we have a right to stand up and say, well, someone's selling you hormonal balancing supplements. And I had a colleague naturopath on the podcast recently, and she said that was one of her biggest things. It doesn't even make sense. What's a hormone balancing?
Yeah, that's right. I
What
know. I
hormones are
know.
you balancing, and why are you balancing them, and how does it work? And then
Yeah,
it goes through the whole thing from green smoothies through to restricting certain foods, or just reminds me that it's amazing how things come around. There was a lot of
they really
promotion
do.
about raw fruit juices, and of
Okay.
course people literally turning orange because they were drinking too much carrot juice.
Yeah,
Like the whites of your eyes, I should
yeah,
say,
yeah,
all had
yeah,
this orange glow. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, oh, it happens from time to time. I suppose the one good thing about green smoothies, they might upset your digestive system, but at least they don't turn you green. So,
True, true.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but laughs aside, I mean, it really does make it difficult for people
Mm,
who are really wanting to improve their food choices and their health with
yeah,
all of that noise out there.
yeah.
And I just sort of thought for myself, the first time I really understood in some ways it's simple what we do, but complex to implement. I had a whiplash injury, and I was told by the physio I had to do exercises 3 times a day.
Mhm.
I couldn't even do that. And it
Yeah,
really made me step back and think, oh my goodness, what am I asking my clients to do? What we do
yeah,
interacts with biology, it interacts with psychology, sociology, and dietology, which is really just all that nutrition information and knowledge
Yeah.
people have got already. It's got to cut through those four areas to be actually something that can be implemented.
Yeah. Which is why I think taking a slow approach is, and I know you do the same thing, Sallyanne, is a
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
it's the only way forward, really, because if you try and like change someone's complete diet or whatever they're doing overnight, I mean, they might do it for a week, maybe two if you're lucky, but it's
yeah,
like when people join these challenges, these X amount of week challenges,
yeah.
6, 8, 12, whatever week challenges. I might do it for a little bit, but it's not, if it's not sustainable with your life, with your whatever you've got going on, whether it's kids, partner, family, other family members, like you may have a carer responsibility. Like if it's not compatible with any of that, then
No,
it's not going to last. So changing
no.
one or two things, little things like a little bit more fiber, a bit more water, or all those slow changes over a long period of time that make a big difference.
That's
Um,
that's that's exactly right. And I think one of my clients sort of said it really succinctly was that often it's not that you don't know what you need to
yeah,
do. You don't know
yeah,
where to start. And it's
yes, I would
like,
agree. Yeah,
and that's where you need that one-on-one sort of guidance to do
yeah,
that. And you have this saying, knowing what to eat isn't enough.
no,
A lot of us know what to eat, but actually putting it into practice is
yeah,
where it becomes more difficult. So
yeah,
I think if you're listening and thinking, I really want to change, what I'm eating, then reach out to Sharon or I, and we'll be giving our contact details so you can certainly follow up with us, because it really is just about getting started and getting to that point where you're confident to go forward on your own. And you will get to that stage as
yeah,
long as you get the foundation right. And Sharon, as you know, the space that I work in is very much the behavior change.
yeah,
And people don't realize that they have the habits that they do. And when you start understanding the why of eating, then there's quite a few aha moments as well.
yeah,
Thinking, I
yeah,
didn't really know I was a stress eater. It's amazing how often that one comes up. Well,
yeah.
I didn't know that, yeah, stress was causing me to eat when I'm not hungry.
Mm.
And I think it's really great just to get the support and the guidance on those different aspects of eating. So when we start looking at the future, perhaps of our own work and dietitians in general, what do you
Mm.
see happening, or what do you think would be a positive sort of vision for the future for people with eating and health?
I can kind of see a future where we do a lot more personalized nutrition things, hopefully, like maybe a little bit more of discovery around genes
Yeah.
and how that affects us. Because I do think it does. I think it has a big effect on people. The genes have been passed down to you. I do believe there are people out there who have tried everything
Mm.
and just cannot shift the weight if that's what they're trying to do. And that is where these medications can help. I do, and there's no reason, like there's no reason, like there's no, they're exercising, they're eating well, they're doing all the things, but it's still not shifting, and there has to be something else. I mean, hormones are another thing that will come into play. And I think the more we learn about hormones, and because as we know, nutrition is still a really new science and we're learning more and more all the time. But I think, yeah, a bit of gene stuff I think could be good. I think it might be out there a little bit already, but I think if it's a bit more accessible and we get to know a little bit more about it, that might be a future aspect. Yeah, what do you think the future's going to look like?
Yeah, I'm with you. I certainly had genetics down there as well.
Mm,
And I remember being really excited for at the International Congress of Dietetics that was held in Sydney. So that must have been back in about 2012 or something like that. And I was still putting my ideas together for the Eating for You book and what would then become programs and courses that I run. And one thing that I was really stuck on and really frustrated over was the pros and cons of drinking coffee.
mm,
Because taking a
okay.
step back, I've always had an interest in Eastern nutrition as well.
Yep.
And that's why I was so excited when the research about the gut microbiome was coming out, because the principles of Eastern nutrition are all about getting the gut functioning right.
Yeah, okay.
And again, that's the inquiring mind I suppose dietitians have with our science
Mm,
background, is that it's like, well, if this has been happening for centuries, how is it happening? Certainly Ayurvedic doctors in India can explain it to me. And now we're starting to see some of the science come out
yeah.
to actually explain it in a different way
Yeah.
as well. But the genetics thing that I was really struggling with was understanding, well, why is coffee beneficial to some people or some conditions and not others? And we've
Mm,
known for a while that caffeine can increase blood pressure in some people, but not in others. And
yeah.
why is it that the caffeine is more potent for some people, yet, all of the phytochemicals or phytonutrients that are beneficial in coffee are beneficial to someone else? And of course, it was all about some people have genes that make them slow metabolizers of caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's who I am. I
Yeah.
love the smell of coffee, but
Yeah.
I literally have heart palpitations if I drink coffee.
Right. Yeah.
And it all
Yeah.
started to make sense. And what was being presented back then, 13 years ago, was that sure, if you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine, then the caffeine's in your system much longer to block certain receptors and maybe create high blood pressure in some people. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it all started making sense. But
Yeah.
I think when it comes to something like caffeine for me, it's like, well, are you drinking the cup of coffee because you enjoy it, or are you drinking it because you're tired and you're trying
Mm,
to keep going? And
mm,
this is what concerns me a little bit, is that sometimes we override our natural, quite
oh, yeah.
understandable tiredness
Yeah, we
with
do.
something like caffeine. And
Yeah.
caffeine is definitely addictive. I have
Mm,
done a number of health retreats where you are not on caffeine, you're not on alcohol. And even from black tea, caffeine withdrawal headaches are frightening. Like, the
yeah.
first few days, they're
Yeah.
not pleasant at all.
Yeah.
And I think this is the fascinating thing about nutrition as well, because we get back to that why of eating or why of drinking. Why is it that you're doing this? And again, sometimes we don't know. It's just become a habit and we don't realize.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's a good opportunity. I think as dietitians, we're well placed to get people to think about their behaviors. And you and I were talking off air before about women find it hard to admit they're actually tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, well, that opens up a whole nother conversation about work-life balance and what that means, and it's different for everybody. And that's what I find exciting as a dietitian, is that we can actually get people starting to think about what it is that's not
Mm,
working for them, what works for
yeah.
them. And as
Yeah.
you and I have both said in this episode, that it's just one step at a time.
It
And
really is.
let's choose the step that's going to make the most difference for you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think the other thing for me, I think especially because of the research into the gut microbiome, I actually can see a little bit of a return to maybe growing some of our own food.
Mm,
And we certainly saw that through COVID, because
yeah.
there were food shortages in some situations and people got an interest in growing food. And I know I hear my clients tell me that their kids are growing food at home, the kids are
Mm,
growing food at school. So I'm hopeful, put it that way. This is more of a hopeful thing,
yeah.
that we can return to some whole foods and
Mm,
really focus on those family friendly meals. And I suppose getting kids involved with cooking. I mean, why is
yeah, for
it
sure.
that mum and dad have to do the cooking? I always remember Rosemary Stanton, who some of our listeners will be well aware of. She's been a leading dietitian, not
Mm,
only in New South Wales, but in Australia. And one of the first things she did with her kids was teach them to cook.
yeah. Yeah.
And whether it was just cutting up the vegetables or grating some cheese or picking the tomatoes, they were involved with the food process.
And it makes them much more willing to eat the food as well, to eat
That's
what's
right.
being served.
Yeah.
Similar to what you were saying about growing the food, one thing I was discussing with a friend the other day, actually, not a client, a friend, and because she was asking me about being a dietitian, all the things, and I said, I think if you consider the cost of living at the moment, the one thing I think actually that might happen is we're coming back to basics of cooking.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have lost the art of cooking, and it's not that hard. Like, but I think there are so many weird and wonderful and beautiful recipes out there, so it can feel hard, but there are some really basic ones that you can do that hit the
Yeah.
mark, cost effective. You can do
Yeah.
big meals, bulk meals, family food prep for the week, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And so I think, along with potentially growing your own food, it's preparing that food as well
Yeah.
and getting back to making some basic dishes that are hearty, wholesome,
Mm.
and hit the mark.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think also too in that mix, then potentially we'll start getting more of those plant foods back
Mm,
into our meals and our snacks, because that's one
yeah.
thing that I suppose concerns me. And one nutrition message, you were talking about fiber. My nutrition
Mm,
message is, are you having your 5 serves of vegetables a day?
yeah.
I'm
Yes. Yes.
always saying,
Chances are you're not.
yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's still only
um,
like, is it 10% of Australians are eating enough
yeah.
vegetables or something? It's very low.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, oh my goodness, when I think about eating, I think, what vegetables am I going to have?
Mm, mm,
And don't get me wrong, I was actually on the committee that reviewed the last dietary guidelines.
yeah.
And again, me being that practical dietitian, I sort of thought, right, can I follow these? Can I eat
Yes.
my
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
and a half cups of cooked vegetables and
Yeah.
2 serves of fruit and my 3 slices of
Yeah.
bread or 3 serves of cereal? And it's challenging. And I
Mm,
follow a vegetarian style of eating. So
yeah.
we do have to be organized to get those vegetables in. And I
Yeah.
think that's like what you were saying. We have to make cooking easier as well.
Mm,
And certainly there's dietitians doing that work. And
yes.
I think probably all of us could do a little bit more of it. Um,
Agreed.
yeah, because I'm always amazed going back to social media. People love it when I'm in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's like, I kind of laugh because women have fought for decades to get
Not being
out
in
of
the
the kitchen.
kitchen. I know. I know.
And it's like, it's a bit of a joke that I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, without a doubt, my most popular reels and videos and things on social media are when I'm in the kitchen cooking.
Well, it probably is quite relatable, you think. Like that's we all, well, most people will try, hopefully do a little bit of cooking. I don't know.
Yes.
You can't really
Yeah.
generalize, but yeah, no, that is really funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a little bit of basic, yeah, I don't know. We
Yeah.
should bring it into schools, some basic knowledge about how to cook dishes for
Yeah, I
kids.
think so. And I think that's something that's changed with education. I mean, I talk
Yeah.
about what's happened with dietetics over 30 years. Even when I did year 11 and 12,
Mm.
because I was sort of streamed off early into maths and science, I didn't even do home economics.
Oh,
So
I never did it.
I had
Nope.
no idea how to actually put a meal together when I went to university and had to cook for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And it was only that I'd seen mum do it
Mm.
that I could kind of get my act together.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen straight away. It's like,
Yeah.
oh gosh.
It's when you get to that age, I think, and then you go a little bit while without veggies or fruit. You're like, oh God, I really could do something green. Like I could
I
just do
know.
something,
I know.
that feeling.
Yeah.
You start to out of necessity. Similar to you, my mum baked a lot, so I picked that up from her, and my kids have picked that up from me, which is
Yeah.
quite nice. And again, it's a cost saving thing apart from anything else, and you can kind of obviously control a little bit more what goes into
Yeah,
the baked goods, which is kind of
definitely.
nice from a dietetics
Definitely.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's something that hopefully we will come back to, sort of
Mm.
looking at that future. And I suppose the other thing that I would like to see moving forward is less of that emphasis on body size and shape
Oh
and
yeah.
that
Yeah.
combination. Because
Yeah.
something else I wanted to share was I can still remember one of the jobs I worked as. Sort of newly graduated in dietetics, and we were in a regional area, and the team used to come together from time to time, and well, it was every couple of months, I think it was. And one of the dietitians, and she's quite a tall lady and quite muscular build, very active, very fit. She
Mm.
was telling us how she had a client come in and say to her, well, I've decided I'm not going to come back anymore because you haven't got it right, so
Mm.
how can you help me? And I don't know what I would have done if one of my clients had said that.
I've heard
Yeah,
a very similar story,
yeah,
not with this lady, obviously, but
yeah,
I've heard,
yeah.
people saying that
And
to dietitians. Yeah.
and then the flip side of that is because one of the other dietitians spoke up and said, well, I've actually been told, and this dietitian was naturally very slim, and the patient said to her, well, you can't help me because you don't understand what it's
Mm.
like being in a bigger
Yep.
body. And I think of all the professions, probably other than
Mm.
singers and movie stars, dietitians probably get judged the most about their size or their shape.
Yep.
So it just is so how can I say it just doesn't make any sense at all. And I suppose that's why again I so much fell in love with Ayurvedic medicine, because they talk
Mm.
about the different body builds, they talk about the different
Yeah.
constitutions, that we're not all the same.
Yep.
And there's that appreciation that it doesn't matter what body you've been born with, you can look after it and
Yeah.
feel blessed that you have a body that works, basically,
Yeah.
rather than being so focused on size and shape.
What
Mm.
size jeans you fit into.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I
yeah.
always say to my clients, like, let's, if it is a weight concern that they're seeing me for, it's, we
Mm.
always pick another measure of health. Like, what is something else that's going to make you feel good about what we're doing?
Yeah,
It's not seeing it on the scales, or,
yeah,
is it being able to bend over and tie your shoes up, or is it being able to
yeah.
walk up the stairs without puffing? Like, is it what's the thing that's going to make you feel pretty good?
Yeah,
And that's kind of nice too. It helps people shift that
yeah,
little bit of a
yeah,
focus away. So
that's right.
yeah.
And again, I think that's a frustration, but it also gives
Mm,
us an opportunity to support
yeah,
people. And as I
that's right.
mentioned earlier, not everyone's ready to take their focus
No.
off the number on the scales, but
Yeah,
at least say to them, hey, this may not be a helpful goal. Your actual
yeah,
focus on weight may be what's stopping you from changing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's only until people are ready that they can actually make that move.
That's
Well,
right.
Sharon, is there anything else you'd like to share about being a dietitian?
I think our profession will grow. I think there's always more need for dietitians. So hopefully that's something we'll get to see in the future. It's lovely, and it's lovely. I'm very happy I've chosen this career, because it is just so nice, as I said before, to connect with people and just
Yeah,
being able to help. And I guess being a woman helps, is one of the reasons why I have decided to specialize in women's health. Just that empathy and that
mm,
appreciation. And we have a lot of stuff thrown at us women these days. We've got a lot. We're
yeah,
trying to do everything. We can't. And I think it's nice having someone on your team to go, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to do it all. You can
yeah.
chill.
No,
Yeah.
that's so true. And I think also too, I have ended up in women's health as well,
Mm,
because working with women struggling with dieting and feeling comfortable in their bodies, I was there. I knew what
yeah.
that was like, and
Yeah.
I knew, have now experienced all the transitions, yeah, and you can get through perimenopause and you can
Mm,
live a healthy and happy life
yeah.
once you're in
Yeah.
menopause.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful as well to, I'm by no means, how can I say, downplaying some of the
No.
severity of symptoms that
No.
women have, but
Yeah.
to know there are lifestyle changes that can really help, and food changes as well that can help at that time. So I think it's really exciting. And as I said, I always think about the frustrations that we face, but then think, well, how can I actually overcome this? And how can I help my clients overcome
Yeah.
this as well? So that's really,
That's right.
really important. And I think, again, another frustration that's also positive is that as more research comes out, then we're going to understand more. And for our
Yeah.
clients, that can be frustrating, but for us, it can be exciting, because you start seeing those missing pieces of the puzzle.
Mm,
And I suppose the mindfulness approach that I've adopted really helps people try things out themselves as well. And I
yeah.
think that's part of mindfulness, the curiosity aspect, that, yeah, sure, take this knowledge and let's try things. And as healthcare practitioners, we always work from at least the do no harm
Yes. Yeah. That's
viewpoint.
right. Yeah.
That's the minimum. Let's do no harm.
Yeah.
And if it can help, then that's a bonus. Whereas
Yeah.
these noisy people in the nutrition space, the influence will say, this is what you're going to get. This is the
Yeah.
benefit you're going to get. And they can sound so convincing and so certain, but they never talk about the harm that it
Yeah.
can cause. Whereas
That's
we're
right.
very much starting from that point of doing no harm and
Yeah.
improving someone's quality of life if we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really true.
Yeah. Well, thanks again,
Lovely.
Sharon,
Worries.
for sharing. And I'll make sure we leave your contact details with this episode's notes. If you've been listening today and want to find out more about what Sharon does, then please reach out to her. And because it's Dietitians Week, I'm also offering my individual consult at half price. So if you're interested in that, then reach out to me as well. And as Sharon and I were talking about, those individual consults are really important, especially that first one, to really see where you're starting from and where you want to get to, and articulating little steps to help you get there. And I know Sharon has the same approach as well. So once again, Sharon, a big thank you
No worries. Thank you.
celebrate our wonderful profession.
Yes.
For Dietitians Week. And if you've been listening and you've enjoyed this episode, let us know. And please share the link on your social media. And I look forward to sharing with you again next week. You have been listening to the Eating for You podcast with Sallyanne Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.